Mary Jane, pot, dope, weed, reefer, and cannabis are just a few common terms that marijuana goes by. Medicinal marijuana is another term for the drug that has healing benefits to those who are in permanent pain, have epilepsy, have cancer, and/or other illnesses. It is said that medicinal marijuana helps control the symptoms of these illnesses, giving the patient a better lease on life. Although a drug, medicinal marijuana differs from other marijuana as it contains little of the chemical tetrahydrocannabinol, which is a chemical that makes people high. Medicinal marijuana is, however, rich in the chemical cannabinol, which has a lot of healing benefits. This henceforth creates the debate about whether or not medicinal marijuana should be legalized. Many believe it should be, as it drastically improves the life of those who are ill. Others believe that it should not be legalized, as the risks of use of medical marijuana have not been fully explored and that it could lead to other illnesses.
Patients must suffer severe epileptic seizures, muscle spasms, nausea arising from chemo or chronic pain approved by 2 specialists. They'll be able to access a range of products including oils, sprays and vaporizers. The legislation allows cannabis to be manufactured and supplied in the state, all of which will be overseen by a new government body called the Office of Medicinal Cannabis, which we're reliably informed is less this and more this.
There has been a multitude of studies conducted on the benefits and effectiveness of medical marijuana. As seen in the video, after solid research, the Victorian government allowed a cultivation trial to begin at a research facility and establish an Office of Medicinal Cannabis within the Department of Health and Human Services. This was in order to oversee the manufacturing, dispensing, and clinical aspects of the framework to treat chronically ill patients experiencing debilitating diseases. The studies actually showed extremely positive results, but they did come with some challenges.
While many people advocate the use of medical marijuana, there are arguments that suggest that its use may present adverse effects, such as short-term memory impairment, motor coordination, and judgment. Adverse psychological effects have also been noted, with several studies reporting associations between cannabis use and psychosis, particularly connected with long-term use. Other psychological disorders have also been linked with cannabis use, with evidence of increased anxiety and depression, as well as the risk of cannabis dependence.
A clinical review of medical cannabis use looked at the condition a patient possessed and the outcome of their cannabis use, as well as their method of delivery, whether that be smoking or otherwise. There were significant positive changes in patients diagnosed with Alzheimer's, multiple sclerosis, and AIDS patients, among many other conditions. Positive effects experienced were significant reductions in pain and sleep disturbances among multiple sclerosis patients and increased appetite with AIDS patients experiencing anorexia. Cannabis is still used by 10 to 15% of patients with multiple sclerosis and non-cancer types of chronic pain for both analgesia and psychological detachment. Various well-designed, randomized placebo-controlled trials have shown that smoked cannabis can relieve peripheral, post-traumatic, and HIV-induced neuropathic pain. Although there is evidence to support the use of medical marijuana, challenges still remain. Quality control and contamination are seen as major issues that can adversely affect the proper administration of cannabis. Failure to address these points could result in disastrous effects to a patient's health, such as pneumonia and dependency, as Emma already stated. The issue of autonomy when discussing the use of medical marijuana is always a strong one when it comes to patient use. Beauchamp and Childress attributes the word autonomy from its Greek definition as self-rule and self-determination. It is for this reason that patients argue that they have the final say in how they treat their illness, because it's their own body, therefore their own decision. One of the reasons for its legalisation in Victoria was the Commission Chairman Philip Cummins said it was driven by compassion for people suffering with no other means of treatment. Dr. Freckleton, who led the review into medical cannabis use in Victoria, said a significant number of people were already using cannabis for medicinal purposes. They are doing so illegally. That means there's a fear on their part of being prosecuted and embarrassed, he said. This directly correlates with the need for autonomy, or self-governance in this case. Delivering autonomy to patients is extremely easy, and by making medicinal marijuana legal, it allows for the public to make an informed and conscious decision regarding its use on themselves or a suffering loved one.
Acts of beneficence refer to actions made for the benefit of an individual. Kinsinger discusses the role of beneficence within a professional-client relationship, stating that it is the obligation of the professional to always act to favour the best interest of their client. It can be argued that the prescription of medical marijuana to ill and suffering patients is an act of beneficence, as it seeks to offer relief to those who are terminally ill, suffer with chronic pain, or experience epileptic seizures. Beneficence involves the weighing of the possible positive outcomes of an action against its possible harms. This can be seen in the case of Tara O'Connell, a young girl in Australia who suffered up to 200 epileptic seizures a day, who was administered cannabis oil, and within 10 days she was experiencing 0 seizures. When discussing the choice to try medical marijuana, Tara's mother stated, "She was already dying. We couldn't make the situation any worse."
Medicinal marijuana can be a lot of help to many people around the world who are suffering. Non-maleficence is defined as to do no harm. Many believe that for someone to deny access to a drug that relieves pain and suffering, especially when the patient has a terminal disease, violates one of the main bioethical principles of a medical professional, to do no harm. Others could disagree, arguing that by giving a patient medicinal marijuana without knowing the consequences, long-term effects, or risks to the patient that it may or may not have on the human body is seen as doing harm or potential harm to the patient.
Justice in regards to the usage and distribution of medical marijuana is a very complex and often biased situation. As stated by the Australian Human Rights Commission, all persons shall be equal before the law. This law being upheld in all situations does not allow for any leniency for cases of individuals sourcing the illegal substance, even if the intended use is of good nature and benefit to themselves or another person. Australia at this current point in time is at a crossroad regarding the stance on medical marijuana. Laws have been passed ensuring that the substance is legal to trial in a clinical environment, yet any other method of consumption, possession, or distribution outside of this is still considered illegal and is a prosecutable crime. A 32-year-old father from Cairns was faced with this issue recently after being arrested by police for administering medical cannabis oil to his daughter, who suffers from a rare form of cancer called neuroblastoma. Despite the father's claims that it was benefiting his daughter by managing the pain and health-related issues associated with his daughter's illness, the man was still charged with administering a dangerous drug to a minor and refused access to his sick child. Regardless of someone's intentions with this substance, under the eyes of the law, anyone caught with marijuana is viewed as a criminal. Many other parents and relatives of sick or disabled individuals have faced the same fate, risking themselves to do what they believe is best for their loved ones. The only sight of change is when clinical trials initiate. Recommendations made towards this subject can be touchy since everyone is entitled to their own opinions and morals about cannabis use. From the information we have gathered, it would be a fair comment to say that the benefits of using medical marijuana outweigh the risks associated with the drug. With this being said, those individuals who are ill and fit the criteria should be given access to medicinal cannabis. To ensure the correct people are receiving the drug, it would have to be administered in a controlled environment and be thoroughly regulated.
Medicinal marijuana is a very debatable topic that many people either feel strongly for or against. Throughout this presentation, you have been given both the positive and negative effects of using the drug. The 4 bioethical principles were also touched upon, providing information about the autonomous right of the patient to decide whether or not they want to use the drug. Beneficence and non-maleficence dealt with the fundamental rule of the medical professional to do what is right for the patient and above all else do no harm. Justice represents the right of the patient versus what is legal. Recommendations is the personal opinion of the group based upon the research undertaken for this presentation. This leaves us with the questions: do the potential risks of medicinal marijuana outweigh the benefits of its usage? And why are so many suffering patients in Australia left to endure pain when there is a possible solution?